entire screen and share and Canva and present. Sweet. Okay. So I spent like an hour doing this yesterday. Bear with me on this. So again, it's just wholesaling 101 for the first training. We are running late on this, so we're going to go till probably about 10:30 or so. Although I don't think it's going to take that much time to dive into this. So, oh, let me get rid of that. Ta-da. Cool. Oh, darn. You're supposed to move. There we go. So basically, we're going to look over the overview of the entire acquisitions process. We're going to cover some best practices, system implementation that's kind of needed when doing not just acquisitions, but wholesaling in general. If you want to have like a really good, solid business doing this, different lead generation and lead sources that you can start picking apart. Skip tracing, we'll cover what skip tracing is, why that's important. We'll cover leveraging your network, and then we'll just wrap everything up at the end of it. So basically, when you're wholesaling a property, the acquisition side of it is you find a property that's distressed, or you find a homeowner that's in a distressed situation, either or. You connect with that homeowner, you discover what problems that they have, you kind of listen to their story, everything going on in their world to figure out one, what's going on, and two, is there really anything that you can do to really provide them a support? So those are the things that we want to look for. And from there, if there's an actual service that we can provide based off of the feedback they've given us, based off of that conversation that we had with them, then we can start looking at negotiating an actual and putting a purchase and sell agreement together with terms that are actually going to be important for them, that keep their best interests in mind. And then from there, once we have that agreement put together at the very end of it, if it's something that they want to move forward with, then we get the property under contract because they essentially just authorize the agreement for us. Now, once this property is under contract, that's when Texas realizes or recognizes that we have equitable interest in that property. So from there, that's when we find an investor-friendly title company, we open up escrow, and we get the ball rolling. So that's essentially acquisitions in a nutshell. So some best practices. One, you want to understand the market that you're going into. If you're doing it just here in Texas, we're in DFW, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. But if you're doing this nationally, if you're planning to do this on a national level, then you want to make sure you have a good, solid understanding as to what markets you're going to go into, because that's going to be extremely important to understand. Then you also want to have very effective lead generation. We'll cover that here later on. That's going to be like your bloodline for your actual business itself. If you don't have really good, or I suppose if you don't have any effective lead generation, then you're just going to be pouring money down the drain, and it's not going to be like beneficial for you. So from there, you want to have efficient deal evaluation. This is a tough one for a lot of newer wholesalers getting into the game, simply because they just aren't familiar with how to run accurate comps and how to get accurate ARVs. And from there, they're not too familiar with how to structure an offer to present to the seller that doesn't just work for the seller, but is also going to work for the end buyer at the end of it, because that's going to be very, very, very important. You could lock a deal up at any price, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a good deal for the investor. So last thing I want to teach you guys, or the last thing I want you guys to do, is to lock up deals that are garbage and sending them to investors that just do not work and the numbers don't make any sense at all. Building strong relationships. This is again going to kind of come, I guess, into or tie into like leveraging your network. Building really good, solid relationships is key in this industry. So that's really important. And then you want to streamline your processes. And you typically are going to do this with system implementation, which we'll dive into. I'm sure, for the most part, a lot of you have heard like the ABCs of selling, which is always be closing. I'm not a fan of ABCs because it's very presumptive and it's an assumptive side of sales, but we'll talk on that like I guess later on today. Um, but I do believe in always be learning, the ABLs. You always want to be learning and growing in this industry, not just with different, I guess, exit strategies or entry strategies as far as cash or creative goes, but you want to grow and learn as the market changes. You want to be able to adapt with it as well. So that's going to be really, really important. And then lastly, you want to have effective negotiations at the end of the day, because if you are not strong with negotiations or sales, it's going to be hard to essentially lock up a property. And that's going to be tough. So, all right. So understanding your market. I put together a list of do's and don'ts, and I've had to learn this kind of the hard way, especially when I just started off. There's a lot more don'ts than there is do's, unfortunately, which is kind of ironic. Well, not ironic, but funny. So, um, you want to make sure that you're aware of all the market trends that are going on in the areas that you're looking at, right? So you want to remain informed as far as like rates, inventory, how long properties are sitting on the market. Like right now in DFW, the average days on market is 41 days. Okay. So it's little stuff like that that you want to be aware of to make sure that you're staying on top of like market trends. Um, that's pretty key. Demographics, you also want to understand the areas or the zip codes that you're looking in as well, because this is going to help you determine what essentially location class you're getting deals in. Is it A class location? Is it a B class, a C class, right? So just to kind of emphasize on that a little bit more, you've got different location classes and you've also got different, I guess, property classes as well as far as condition goes. It could be condition, it could also revolve around the financial performance of it too. So an A class location is essentially like a really well established area that's got a strong economy and houses there are like high end houses, right? So this is like your rich area. That's an A class kind of location. So if you're able to find, let's say, like a C class property in an A class location, that is a big value add, really, really big value add. So that's going to be something that you're going to want to look into and try to lock up. For example, I picked up a full duplex in Preston Hollow, which is an A class location, and the property itself wasn't really a C class property. It was like I would say a lower B class property. It needed quite a bit of work, but the ARV was 2.8 and I locked it up for 635. So that was a huge, huge spread. It's probably one of the biggest deals I've done as far as residential goes. So understanding your demographics is very important. And then you also want to, I guess, coming back towards or focusing a little bit more on networking as well. You don't want to be afraid of reaching out to real estate agents and networking with agents. There are, I call them unicorn agents because of how rare they are. But you can come across some agents that are investor friendly, that are not opposed to working with investors. And I love agents personally, and I've done a lot of work and a lot of deals with agents. And the reason I love them is because one, they're essentially free bird dogs for you. Like they're a free lead source. All you have to do is just build a relationship with them, get to know them, and not just work related, but even outside of work, right? So they'll bring you essentially free leads if you do a really good job and you build a really good rapport with them, and that's pretty important. So there's nothing better than like a free lead coming across the table. It's really awesome. So agents are really good. That also does include several brokers. If you can establish, for example, Rhonda Forte, Forte Legacy Group. She's a really good friend of mine. She's a broker. She's got several agents underneath her. I was able to build up a really good, solid relationship with her. And because of that, I was able to then essentially train like her agents to help them become like unicorn agents. So building relationships, not just with agents, but also with brokers is going to really kind of pay off. Networking with other investors and other wholesalers, that's also going to be really important. You never want to just shoot yourself shy. I think that's kind of a big mistake I made. Um, was I was doing all these deals, but they were all like direct to seller. And if it wasn't direct to seller, it was usually from an agent. So I didn't have a really big, I guess, network. I knew a lot of wholesalers, but I never really networked with them on that level. And so that's one big thing like I would change is networking with more wholesalers, building that up and actually doing more deals with them. Because that's going to be really, really vital as well. Now, some don'ts. Ooh, some don'ts. Okay. Having historical data when you're looking at comps is really, really great. So typically when you're running comps, I like to look at 90 days to 180 days. I'm not a big fan of going past 180 days because a lot has changed from like 6 months ago until now, or I guess past 6 months ago. So 6 months to go, 6 months ago to like 12 months ago, a lot has changed in comparison as today. So typically when I run comps, I like to stay within 180. Now, unless I'm not getting any really good comp data, then I will go out to like 365. But the numbers that I'm seeing there, I take with a grain of salt. I take it into consideration. And typically, if I'm looking at like, let's say we got 4 properties that come in around like 270 to 280, a safe assumption would be like 275 would be great for the ARV. But because these properties sold almost a full year ago, I'm not going to consider 275 as the ARV. I'd probably come in lower at about 265, 260. Just to be a little bit more conservative with those numbers. So don't necessarily rely on the historical data so heavily if you have to go that far back. Now, if I have 4 or 5 properties that sold within the last 90 days that are between 270 and 280, then I have a solid ARV between 270 and 280. So I'll probably put it at like 275. So there is that. You don't want to contract any properties in rural areas. This is one of the first hard lessons I ever learned wholesaling. The more rural of an area, the harder it is to move the property essentially. So if there's very little to no investor activity in that area, it's probably going to be a no-go. I would not risk putting up EMD for it. And I sure as hell wouldn't focus all of my time trying to move that one property because it's just going to be a lot of time wasted essentially. So I personally would recommend and encourage to stay away from rural areas just for that reason. Typically, I would say if a city or a town has a population of like 50,000 people, then I would look into it. But anything less than that, I wouldn't really kind of like dive into or lock up a deal. You don't want to overlook properties that are currently active. So again, this kind of comes back to analyzing a deal. So when I'm running comps and I'm looking at what's going on in that market, I want to have a full bird's eye view and a solid understanding as to everything that is happening, right? So I want to look at everything that's active under contract, everything pending, everything that is closed. Because if you got a lot of comps that were 180 days old and they've got like the 270 to 280 range, and you're at like a solid 275 range, but then you got this property that's listed, right? And let's say it's listed for like 47 or 50 days. Let's say it's 50 days. It's listed for 50 days, but it's a really good solid ARV comp, which means it's extremely comparable to your subject property and it's fully renovated and they did a nice job. If that property's sitting for 50 days and it's listed at 275, it's probably safe to say that 275 is a little overpriced now. So you don't want to overlook the properties that are currently active on the market. You want to take those into consideration when determining your ARV as well. This was a really hard lesson. You do not want to base your ARV on one comp. Don't ever do it. Especially if you're planning to do a fix and flip, because if you do that, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. you want to have you want to have as much solid data as you possibly can. If you're only pulling up one good ARV comp in the last 365 days, you should be extremely conservative on your ARV. So if you're seeing 275, everything around that property that's sold is not renovated, or it's not like fully renovated, and it's just selling as is. So you got a lot of as is comps. Well, I hate doing this, but this is like last resort. I would essentially take the price per square foot in that case. So I would look at price per square foot in that particular market, and then I would use that, multiply the price per square foot or the average times the square foot of the property, and then use that as the ARV just to be conservative. I would say that's probably like best practice to do that. And another thing, you don't want to look over, or I guess look at comps that are across a major highway or across a major road, because one, the subdivisions are going to be entirely different, and two, it's just like, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, you just don't want to do it. This is like, you do not do that. You don't want to take anything in consideration that's over across the highway, because you're going to look at entirely different subdivision, entirely different neighborhood. You could have a C-class location on one side of the highway, and you could have like a B-class or A-class location on the other. So you definitely don't want to look at anything or any comps across like a major road or a major highway. So don't do that. Also learn that the hard way as well. Another thing, when looking at comps, and a lot of agents do this, a lot of agents will go out a mile when they're running their numbers. I do not recommend doing that, because a lot can change within a mile. A mile doesn't sound like it's a lot, or the distance isn't very far. But man, when you put a mile radius on a subject property, you're going to be looking at tons of different subdivisions, and each subdivision is a little bit different. So I would not recommend going out a mile. I'd stay at about a half mile, preferably about a quarter mile. But yeah, definitely don't want to go past or look at like a mile. All right, system implementations. So system implementations is going to be key when it comes to really streamlining your processes, and having a really good, successful business. So I guess to give you guys an idea, there's four key pillars in order to have a 7-figure wholesale business. System implementations is one of these key pillars. You've got acquisitions, talent, putting the right people in the right place, financial management, making sure you keep books on everything, right? Understanding what your overhead is, understanding what your ROI is. So understanding the financial standpoint of how the business is running is also key. And then finally, you've got management. Management is also really, really important as well. So not everybody likes to be managed a certain way or the same way. So you got to get a good feel for everybody on your team. But overall, system implementations is going to be extremely important. So when you have system implementations, you've got two types. You've got hard systems. Your hard systems consist of your standard operation procedures. This is basically your how-tos, right? So how to do this, how to do that. This is like everything broken down. So for example, if you are uploading a lead into your CRM system, there should be an SOP showing and breaking down how to do that. How do you upload this lead into the CRM? How to upload a contact to the CRM, how to write up an offer, how to send the offer out. Like every process and every little step within your business, there should be an SOP that everybody's able to essentially abide by and kind of follow. So your hard systems is really, really key. And this is also going to help you determine what kind of KPIs you need. Your KPIs are going to be extremely important to determine the overall success of not just yourself, but everybody else on your team. So your KPIs, if you're not familiar, are your key performance indicators. These are going to be the different metrics that you're looking at. How many calls, how many dials, how many conversations, how many offers did you send out? How many deals did you get? So basically, you have all these little steps to get to one deal. How many of each do you have to do to funnel down to get a deal? So that's going to help you determine your average numbers per metric to get a deal. So having KPIs is really important. It's really important because it's also going to allow you to look at how you're performing and essentially hold yourself accountable. So having extreme ownership in doing your KPIs is like vital for doing this successfully and doing this consistently. You can get a deal once a month and be okay. Um, but I think one of the big things a lot of newer wholesalers struggle with in this industry is having consistency of getting deals locked up. But if you understand how to use KPIs and you hold yourself accountable to those KPIs, that'll help you remain consistent throughout the entire process and consistently get deals. Your soft systems. Your soft system basically includes every little thing that you need to get your daily tasks done. This is going to be your CRM. This is going to be task management. Um, it could be like a net 10 listing if you're looking at EOS systems. Your workflow automation like Zapier, webhooks, like these are really, really great tools. Time management techniques. So this is like if you're breaking down, utilizing your calendar to really break down time blocks and sticking to those time blocks. Then you got like collaboration tools, Microsoft Teams, Google, Slack, so on and so forth. Document management systems, which kind of can tie into your CRM as well. But you could use like DocuSign, Panda Docs, Adobe. Adobe's really good as well. And then continuous improvement processes. So this is essentially where you can send out service to anybody on your team. You can look at, okay, this is working, this is not working. How can we improve it? So you're getting constant feedback. So those are essentially your soft systems that are going to be really important in order for you to get like your daily tasks done and to remain effective and also efficient. Now we're getting into like the nitty gritty. So you got lead gen. When it comes to lead generation, there's tons of different things that you can do to start looking at prospects. You've got direct mailers. I'm not a big fan of direct mail campaigns, and the only reason for it is because it is extremely costly and it's got very little return. So you could spend $1,400, $1,500, hell, 10 grand on one campaign, and you might get a lead and you might not get a lead. I think I've gotten a couple more calls to get cussed out than anything by direct mail than I've actually gotten leads from it. So, not a big fan of it personally, but if it works for you, perfect. You got cold calling. You can do cold calling in a lot of different ways. You can hire a VA to do it, or you can create a list that look at like absentee owners, properties going through probate, distressed properties, high equity, low equity, if you're doing like sub two. Like there's a lot of different list source that you can pull. And once you get these lists of all these properties, you can do one of two things. You can skip trace them all for free by yourself, which is going to take a long time, or you can send it to a third party skip trace service. Once you do that, they'll send you back an Excel sheet with all the numbers and emails that they could find for the properties that are, I guess, related to it. And from there, you can essentially take that, plug it into a dialer, and just knock it all out. Cold calls. You can have like 4 lines ringing at once, so you can just like start flushing through it. And then you call these sellers up. So that's cold calling. You've got driving for dollars. This is something that I still do on a daily basis, but I don't actively go out and do it. I drive for dollars as I'm driving to wherever it is that I need to go. So, for example, going to my brother-in-law's house or going to my uncle's house or my wife's uncle's house. Wherever it is that I'm driving, I'm constantly looking at properties. And, excuse me. If I see something that's distressed, then I'll notate the property. Like I'll take note of the property and I'll skip trace it later and get a hold of that or try to get a hold of that seller for it. So driving for dollars is really good, and you can use batch leads, and you can use there's another one that I used quite a bit. I can't remember. I have to look at it. I can't remember. But driving for dollars is a good one. And then you got bandit signs. Bandit signs are the little signs on the side of the road that say "We buy houses." So, fun fact: a bandit sign is actually how I got my first deal within learning this industry. So, 2 weeks of learning about wholesaling, I locked up my first deal using a bandit sign, and it wasn't anything fancy. I literally took a piece of cardboard paper and a marker and wrote "I buy houses cash," put my number on it, got some zip tied as stop signs around town. Um, and I got leads from it. I didn't just get my first deal out of it, but I got multiple people calling me about selling properties, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing, but I thought it was so awesome. And then when I actually contracted that first property, man, that was an adrenaline, so that was really cool. But that's essentially what bandit signs are. All right, so this is probably my favorite. You've got online marketing. So you can use SEO, which is search engine optimization. This is essentially what is going to rank your website on Google. So SEO is pretty important if you have a website and you're doing like online marketing. Pay-per-click PPC. This is Google Ads. I've heard really good stories about it, but I've never had a lot of success with it, like at all. So, like for example, the last group I was with, we ended up putting like 12 grand PPC and got 3 leads. Two of them from other wholesalers, and one of them was like a bot and just made no sense at all. So it was like 12 grand down the drain. Didn't work. Um, the wholesale leads probably could have worked, but they were trash, so didn't work. Um, and then you got social media marketing, such as Facebook. Facebook is like my go-to. I love using Facebook marketing. And then from Facebook, because Facebook or Meta now owns Instagram, you can actually use the business manager associated with Facebook, um, and get straight to Instagram from that. So Facebook marketing is really, really great. You can use LinkedIn for marketing, but it's a little bit more tough utilizing LinkedIn because for the most part, LinkedIn's used for businesses. So if you're doing like B2B, then that'd be great. B2B is business to business. So if you're selling a service to another business, then that would be great. But LinkedIn does work, believe it or not. I skip traced a owner for a self-storage facility out of Mansfield on LinkedIn, messaged him. Turned out he had a portfolio of 10 facilities, and he was open to selling them. So he wanted 45 million for all 10 facilities, and I generated an offer for 32.9. So, and I did that in less than 2 weeks. It blew my mind. And that all came from LinkedIn. So LinkedIn does work. Um, Networking. So networking again kind of ties back into what we were talking about earlier. This is building really good, solid relationships with a lot of different people in this industry: agents, brokers, wholesalers. Like you want to really build a good relationship with these individuals. You've even got like private money lenders that you can build relationships with. You've got underwriters like these, like even loan officers. Like you want to build relationships with all these people, and one by doing that, it's going to build a good reputation for yourself, and you're going to become a little bit more well known. So that's going to help you as well. So building your network is really really key. A good way to do that as well is attending local RIA events. A RIA is basically a real estate meetup. There's tons of them happening here in the DFW area. There's one that happens on a weekly basis that is stemming from a wholesaling company. So attending these events, networking with people there, key. And then you've also kind of tying back to online marketing, you got your website and your SEO. So having a website is also really important, and having like a contact form or a landing page, whatever it is, having a website is important. And that again will tie into your SEO. So just making sure that your overall meta tags, your meta descriptions, your heading types, your keywords are all like up to par on your website, because that's going to determine where it's going to rank on Google and how well it's going to rank. So also key. Then you've got the MLS if you have access to it. If you don't have access to it, you've got Zillow. So you can go to Zillow and see all the properties that are currently listed on there as well. But utilizing the MLS is really, really, really good. And I think that's where a lot of wholesalers kind of miss out on, is they don't focus so heavily on the MLS and they try to find all these properties off market. But when you find a property on the MLS, it tells you what? It tells you, one, that seller is for sure wanting to sell that property. Otherwise, they wouldn't have listed it. So there's that. So there's motivation already. And secondly, if you can find a property that's been sitting for over 60 days, 70 days, 80 days, well, the likelihood of that seller kind of wanting to move on it and there being a little bit more urgency kind of goes up a little bit. Um, so there's that as well. So MLS is a really, really good tool. Again, if you don't have it, you can find properties that are currently listed for sale on the MLS utilizing Zillow. You've got auctions. I've never been a big fan of the auctions. There's a guy in San Antonio that goes every single Tuesday and he's locking up properties like crazy. He's a solid dude. Love him. Got nothing but a lot of respect and a lot of love for the guy. But that's like his go-to every single week, and he generates a lot of deals just out of the auctions. And I'm just not too familiar with the auction. That's why I'm not like diving so heavily into it. I'm just not familiar with it. So not a bad thing, because it's probably not. If it's working for him, it may work for you guys as well. Referral programs. This is essentially like if you do a deal direct to seller and you close on it and you build a really good rapport with that seller and you help them achieve their goals, and you tell them at the end of it, like, hey, if you know anybody else that's looking to sell their property and you recommend them to me and we're able to close and I can help them out, then I'll pay you X amount of money for it as a referral. So that's essentially what a referral program is. You can do it not just with direct to seller, you can do it with agents, you can do it with other wholesalers, you can do it with friends, family, just about anybody. Um, Social media and online marketplaces. So Facebook, believe it or not, Facebook Marketplace is an interesting way to generate a lead. And I've actually closed a few properties that were listed on the Facebook Marketplace. Some of them were from other wholesalers and some of them were direct to seller. So utilizing those or utilizing Facebook Marketplace actually helps. Here's another weird one: OfferUp. Really strange. You can get deals from OfferUp, believe it or not. That's a really good tool. And then you can also look at Zillow for sale by owner. That's another really good one as well. I've locked up a few deals and closed a few deals from FISBOs that were on Zillow. Craigslist, I've never been. You can use it, but I've never had luck, man. Every property I've ever dealt with on Craigslist always turned out to be New Western every single time. They like bombard Craigslist on a daily basis with their posting all day, every day. It's insane. Then you got email marketing. You can do email marketing. There's nothing wrong with it. The only thing is you've got to have, you essentially have to build up a network to add to your, I guess, email campaigns in order to send campaigns out to. So that's also going to be kind of important as well. And then partnering with local businesses. So you can do this with probate attorneys. You can do this with real estate attorneys. You can do this with, this is going to sound terrible, but it's true. You can do this with funeral homes. Funeral homes, believe it or not, are a good source of partnership. So any other type of business you could think of where there's some form of real estate that is related, I would definitely recommend reaching out to them and trying to establish some kind of partnership or even a referral program with them for any leads that they come or they have coming in. So these are ways to generate leads. Now, skip tracing. I don't know if I knew this, but skip tracing actually stems from the phrase of like skipping town. If somebody just skipping town, right? Like, oh man, they're leaving. And now because they left, you have no way of figuring out how to get a hold of them. All you have is like a property address that they used to live or a phone number that they were associated to. And then the tracing is going into like detective mode. So this is when you're like, you become a PI, which is a private investigator, just to find out where they live now or what even their, I guess, what their number is. So when you're skip tracing people, you can do it for free, as I mentioned, but you got to do it one at a time. And there's a lot of different ways to do this, but you can search somebody on truepeoplesearch.com. You can skip trace somebody by their name. If you have the address of the property, which 9 times out of 10 you will, or if you have their phone number. So these are 3 ways you can skip trace somebody on truepeoplesearch.com to find out any relevant information such as emails, phone numbers, or mailing addresses. And then you can call those numbers, cold calling, to reach out and see if they're ever considered possibly parting ways with their property. So that's essentially what skip tracing is. And then you got third-party skip tracing services, and there's tons out there, like tons and tons and tons out there. But it can get costly. So, and not all of them are good. Yeah, not all of them are really good. You're going to have a lot of hits and you're going to have a lot of misses. So you just want to find one that's going to be pretty consistent as far as showing actual production. All right, let's see. Okay, well, the last one, it didn't show up. That's weird. The last one is essentially leveraging your network. So again, so far, everything that we have talked about as far as networking, man, I can't emphasize enough. Like leveraging your network is going to be really key in this industry, especially if you're just starting off and getting into it and getting your feet wet. And the reason for it is because, for example, if you have no idea what you're doing, that's fine. It's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with it. But you're going to cut your learning curve in half if you can essentially network with somebody who's been doing this for so long that is willing to answer any questions you have, bring you under their wing, teach you the ropes, guide you, navigate you, hold your hand throughout the entire process. You're going to learn a lot more. You're going to learn a lot more quickly. And you're also going to learn from the mistakes that they made. So that way you don't have to make those same mistakes. So leveraging your network is really essential in doing this business. It's not just essential, but it's also going to bring you deals as well. Like it will bring you deals. So don't be afraid to or to network with realtors, brokers, other wholesalers, other investors, anybody that you could think of, friends, family, real estate related, anybody that's interested even in investing. Don't be afraid to reach out to individuals and build that network. So in summary, that's pretty much covers the entire acquisitions process for the most part. So again, acquisitions is the process of, oh look, there it goes. Where we at? There we go. So again, acquisitions is just the process of finding a distressed property or distressed homeowner, getting the property under contract, and that's pretty much it. You get the property under contract, you open escrow with title. That is acquisitions. Then that's when we start diving into the dispositions, but we'll talk about dispositions probably next week, just as we dove into this. So I want to break it down a little bit at a time. So that way It's not overwhelming. It's easy to, I guess, break down, understand, and just consume. But that's pretty much the acquisitions process. When it comes to acquisitions, you've got a lot of different things that are important. And again, lead gen is one of them. Leveraging your network is one of them. Deal analysis is like, man, I can't emphasize how important it is to underwrite a property correctly. I think that's something a lot of newer wholesalers struggle with now is underwriting properties that actually make sense. So if you send me, for example, this was actually pretty bad. I had a wholesaler send me a lead that was listed for 107 and he's offering it to me at 105. Love it. Thanks, man. I appreciate your $2,000 discount. I love it. Um, Love it, dude. Killing me. You're killing me, Smalls. Damn it. So don't be that wholesaler. You don't want to be that wholesaler. Um, so I can tell you now, I have not done business with the guy. It's for that reason. So um, don't want to do that. If you can get a deal locked up on the MLS, you want to have at least, like I'd say, anywhere from a minimum of a 10K discount, at least a difference between $10,000. So that takes a little bit of negotiation work out of the game for the investor at the end of the day. So that might be a little bit more beneficial. And that I would probably look at as well. So that's pretty much it. Do y'all have any questions, or is there anything, I guess, anything else I can emphasize on or dive into?
I've got something for you, man. Some of these folks, some of these wholesalers seem to want to daisy chain some stuff. I've never been a huge fan of it, but I'd like to get your take on it, see what you think.
Yeah, man. So we actually just closed on a property that had 4 assignments. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was probably the biggest daisy chain I think I've ever seen. Um, it's not ideal. It's really not. But as long as, like, at the end of the day, as long as the numbers make sense on it, that's all that really kind of matters. But the problem with daisy chains, especially when it gets so big like that, is the lack of control you actually really have. And that's what makes it really difficult because you don't control the overall underwriting of the deal. You can help analyze the deal and help them break the deal down, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that original wholesaler is the one that picked it up and to begin with. They're the ones that structured the deal, and then it also makes negotiations really difficult as well. So I'm not a big fan of it because it's essentially playing a game of telephone,
Right.
and communication overall is kind of diminished. But is it doable? It is doable as long as everybody's on the same page. So I think the best way to do like a big daisy chain in that sense is to either have everybody on a group text, do weekly calls all together, or have everybody on the same email threads just to ensure everyone is on the same page. And it also comes down to transparency. You've got to be transparent. Um, and it's kind of like that deal that we're looking at on, I can't remember, Corda.
Yeah, Alcarda or something like that.
Yeah, that Corda Valley. I think it's Corda Valley.
Mhm.
Um, which kind of blew my mind because Keegley is like one of the biggest astro flippers in the country. Like
Right.
they're huge, and so to see that there's a daisy chain coming from Keegley was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Super interesting. So I'm not opposed to it as long as there's transparency, there's effective communication, everybody's on the same page.
Okay.
But it does make things a little bit more difficult. Seth, Daniel, for y'all that don't know what a daisy chain is, essentially what it is you've got multiple wholesalers in a deal. So you've got the seller, you've got the original wholesaler who has the deal locked up with that seller. Then you get another wholesaler who's like, hey, I can find your buyer. They sign an assignment contract. And then you get another wholesaler is like, hey, I'm a buyer. And they sign an assignment contract and then they bring the actual buyer on. So that's essentially a daisy chain. You just got a lot of parties involved. and a lot more assignment of contracts that are in that one transaction. So that's essentially what a daisy chain is. And if you're doing a daisy chain that big, oof, I would highly suggest having a super savvy title company. That's going to be key. Because if you have a title company that, one, has no idea what assignment of contracts are, and two, you have a title, or if you have a title company that's not familiar with like daisy chains or how to handle it, you're probably gonna have to find a new title company. So it's a tough one. But yeah, that was a good question, brother. Really good question.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else? Anybody else have questions? Daniel and Seth, if y'all have questions, just put it in the chat, man, so I can see. Maybe we can check it out. But I think that may be, I think that might be it. Okay. Will, if you've got questions, man, throw it up in the chat. Let's see. So yeah, Steve, Savannah, just so you guys know, there's some high school students in this meeting, man.
Nice.
Right? I thought that was pretty cool.
That's
I was
cool.
like, it's like you guys do this and you get a deal in your high school while you're in high school, man. It's gonna change your life.
Yeah.
That is gonna change your life.
I wish I knew about it in high school.
That's what I'm saying.
I'd be hecka rich right now.
Right? It's like, dang, man. Okay. Well, I think we're good for the most part. So I'm gonna hop off this call. I do gonna make a phone call for this deal. I'm gonna make sure that we get all the title information squared away, so we go ahead and deposit EMD for it. Sorry to hear this guy called because he called twice. I was like, oof. It's like I can't answer right now, man. So let's call you back in a minute. But if y'all have any more questions, or do y'all have any more questions?
So like, what's your schedule on doing these things, man? Is it Mondays at 9 usually?
Ooh, so I sent you. I believe you should have an invite for every training. But it'll be every Monday, ideally starting from 9 a.m.
Okay.
Starting from 9 a.m. to about 5 o'clock or about 5:15.
Okay.
And each one's a little bit different. So this is about kind of why I was emphasizing, like, it's a full day's length of training.
Mm-hmm. And
if you don't need to be tied up in every single one of them, there's no need for you to be tied up in every single one of them. Find the ones that you believe you need the most help on, and then jump in those. And if you want to like alternate every other week, that's totally fine too. And every video, because you have access to all these chats, all of y'all have access to these chats. So every video will get uploaded into the chat for you guys to rewatch. So that'll be there for about 30 days, but I also take those videos and upload them to YouTube as well. So y'all have those there too. So that way, like, I guess there's a vault of training sessions. Sweet. Everybody good?
Good. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. I'll be hopping on the next one here shortly after this call. So if y'all are there, I will see y'all. If not, no worries at all. Cool. Yeah, man. All right. Y'all have a good one.
Later.
Later.